Hello, everyone, and welcome to Matchbook Flashback. I'm your host, Alec Ogg, and I've got this big collection of old matchbooks I bought at an estate sale. They're here in this glass jar, and the matches are all different colors and designs from all different times and places. There's hundreds of these matchbooks in here. But the thing is, when I strike each match, the flame begins to swirl hypnotically. And if you look into the flame, you can see a story unfolding in there, trapped like a memory in the matchbook. Before I grab a matchbook today, I wanted to give a shout out to whoever's listening in Slovakia. We keep being at the top of the Slovakian podcast charts, and I think it's probably just one or two people that are doing it. So I wanted to give you guys a special shout out because you're keeping us in the charts. But hey, maybe the match today will be from somewhere in Slovakia. Let's see. All right, I'm reaching into the jar here. All right, got one here. Okay, this is like a orange gold 70s looking. Okay, yeah, it says 1977. It's a rodeo matchbook. It has like the cowboy holding his hat and holding onto the head of a bucking bronco, it looks like. It says rodeo at the top in black script. And at the bottom it says Houston, Mississippi, 1977. And on the back it says Chickasaw County Agri-Center. The Chickasaw County Agri-Center. So yeah, Houston, Mississippi, that's about 2 hours away from me where I live up here in Memphis. Yeah, Mississippi always makes me think of the Natchez Trace Parkway. It's this 444-mile scenic and recreational road, and it's actually run by the U.S. National Park Service. It starts down at the bottom of Mississippi, and it comes all the way up to Nashville here in Tennessee. You can go hiking, biking, horseback riding, camping, all along it. It runs through a lot of wilderness. There's actually a trail marker on the Natchez Trace Parkway right by Houston, Mississippi. And it's kind of interesting. It's called Witch Dance. And the National Park Service put up a trailhead that reads, Witch Dance. The very name conjures visions of eerie midnights. The old folks say the witches once gathered here to dance, and that wherever their feet touched the ground, the grass withered and died, never to grow again. Impossible? Maybe so, but look around. Look for a hidden spot where no grass grows. Kind of creepy for the National Park Service to write that one, but I dig it. So that's enough about Natchez Trace. Let's light one of these Houston rodeo matches and see if there's a story inside. I'm going to open it up here, grab a match. And now when I strike this match, I need you to look deeply into the flame because that's where the story will be. Look deeply into the flame.
Going back, it had to be my brain is stuck on 1977. I'm not sure what grade I was in, but that's the year that sticks in my mind. I remember it being like 3 days, 4 days after summer school break had started. So we were at home playing, just all day, and just like Because in Mississippi during 1970s, you're outside. so, so this dude, I think Daddy knew him. I do think Daddy knew him. He was planning on walking to Houston, Mississippi, the town, to the fairgrounds because he had just got a job there at the rodeo. And from my house to the rodeo would have been another good 15 minutes. So Daddy told him he'll take him. And me and my brother said, hey, we want to ride in the back of the truck, hey, we can. And Daddy said, okay, yeah, I guess. So we took the guy to the rodeo. That's like 15 minutes from where we lived. Dropped him off. He said, thank you. We rode back. No big deal. I would say we were just coming out of the town of Houston. And anybody from Mississippi knows in those small towns, it is pitch black. But this was a full moon lit night. So it was beautiful. The stars are out. But as we approached this area, it's real hard to explain. As the truck approached the area, I looked on the hill. I seen this dog coming down the hill, what I thought was a dog coming down the hill. And once the truck had kind of reached the fence area that separated the hill from the yard, it jumped over the fence. When it jumped over it, it stood up and ran like a man. That's when I froze. And this is what's weird about the whole thing is that it felt like 10 hours, but it only was a few minutes. As this thing ran, it paralleled the truck, but in a weird way, to the point where I saw these shiny eyes, because there was a night light too, but I call it night light, but it was actually a street light that this guy had put in his yard. I saw the eyes, the sparkle of the eyes. It looked at my brother on the other side of me. It looked at my daddy driving. But it stayed its focus kind of ahead of the truck, but enough to stay out of everyone's sight but mine for some reason. And I froze. I couldn't hit my brother. He was on the back of the truck with me. I couldn't hit him. I just couldn't move. In my brain, I'm thinking, this is my imagination. This is my imagination. This can't be real. It's just I can't be seeing monsters. So I just shook my head, closed my eyes, shook my head, and it was still there. I closed my eyes, shook my head, it was still there. And this is weird. It noticed me doing that. It literally stepped under. It never crossed the ditch. It never left the borders of the yard. It just stepped under the nightlight, which is like maybe 20 feet off the ground. Its head was like maybe a few feet under that. It started to beckon for me to come towards it. And I'm thinking, I shook my head, it just kept beckoning for me to come towards it. And it kept doing that until the truck got out of sight. When I got home, when I can finally compose myself, I said, oh, I seen a monster. I described it. My mother said, oh, it's probably a demon. And just praying it, whatever. She asked my daddy, did you see anything? He said, nope. My brother, who was sitting right next to me, right side of me on a toolbox in the back of the truck, my mother said, you didn't see nothing. You was in the back of the truck. He said, I was worried about that big, giant white lion chasing the truck on the other side. So while I'm paralyzed dealing with my creature, he's paralyzed dealing with his creature. And to this day, I can't, my brain still goes back to what was the end game? What was going on? The creature itself was big. And I say female because it had a saggy chest, grayish silver fur, The face is more like human, but not. It was like nose, wide nose, like a human being. Black. I remember the eyes up under the nightlight meshed with the moonlight. Its eyes sparkled, but it's black. Eyes sparkled, but deep set black. Very man-like oval face. Nothing monkey, nothing ape about it. It was just monstrous. And it just kept on beckoning for me until the truck got out of sight. So when I got home, it was like my parents just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. And that's it. So, and the reason my parents are like that because growing up, any paranormal thing that happened to in the house, whether it be with my parents, with my grandparents, cousins, or people in the community, it was looked at as like, oh, it's either a demon or whatever. And they leave it alone. They just like, forget about it. So
Wow. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna rewind us to back to the beginning and then just kind of ask you some questions
yeah.
to
Yeah, because it's hard to like that's why I wrote it down because I'm like,
No, I totally understand. So can you set me up a little bit about what life was like growing up in this area and tell me about your brother and your dad if you're willing to and your mom and kind of just what home life is and how old you are?
I am 54 right now. My dad and my brother. Um, country. This is country. It's Mississippi, but where we live, it wasn't a really big racial divide. It was more like a economic divide. So you have a mixture of everyone living in the same area. So yes, even the kids that lived in that house where the Bigfoot ran across the yard, they were white people in the big house, but their cousins were in a trailer home across the road. So it's kind of this mixed area. I would say poor, but in the back in the day, poor was relative because you played outside, you went to school. You wasn't allowed to like watch TV past 8 o'clock because my parents were really religious. That's why everything was either demon or they didn't really go to the imagination thing because growing up, my grandfather was known for talking to spirits. Go figure. So every time my daddy would experience something or talk about a paranormal event, it was more like gossip. That's why the Bigfoot thing wasn't a big deal to them because on the same road, this is weird too, on the same exact road, maybe 2 years later, my mother, my brother, and my daddy, we were all coming back from revival church on the same stretch of road. A craft, triangular craft, hovered over the truck as we were driving, as Daddy was driving. We looked up. I'm like, wow, what is that? Daddy said, oh no. He just kept on driving. It shot off to the side and kept paralleling us. And we all looked over there. It hovered back over the truck, and then it shot off into the far east of the sky, far eastern skies, and then disappeared. So I said, "Wow, did y'all see that?" And he said, "Yep." My mom said, "Yep." My brother said, I think it's a UFO." We got home, and it was like nothing happened because I realized my parents' idea of strange things means we live in the last days or it's a demon. It's hard to explain my growing up. For example, I'm trying to put you in context of growing up life. For example, you will hear someone say in the community, you remember Sister so and so. You remember Sister Betty. Let's use the word Betty. You remember Sister Betty? And the response would be, yeah, I went to Miss Betty's funeral 2 months ago. Well, she came back and slapped that snot out of her sister. Or my daddy's story. Uh, your granddaddy, your mother's daddy, didn't realize we were married. He had died before they got married. And he came back to pull my daddy out of the bed. And he said my mother had to explain to him that, hey, we're married, so we can do this. He left. So growing up, to hear about the paranormal was like nothing. It was like, oh, it happened. Fine, let's move on. So
How old were you in 1977 ish?
I'm thinking 8 or 9,
Okay.
7, 8 or 9. But this is where I'm stuck at because I remember I only went to Houston Elementary for first grade and second grade. But somehow I remember those kids getting on the bus from that house, how I looked at them when they got on the bus, like, do they know what was in their yard? And so I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm thinking 7, 8 or 9 between those.
Okay. How old was your brother?
3 years older than me. So if I was 7 or 8, he was almost hitting 12.
So walk me into can you re-explain this? You're in your house and a guy comes to get driven to the rodeo?
Apparently, this guy was he couldn't get a ride to the rodeo. He got a job there. He walked to the nearest house, which was mine, because our lights were still on. He said he'd been trying to get a ride to go to the rodeo but he couldn't find one. That's why Daddy said he'd take him, because if he was to walk there, it'd be a long walk because it's pitch black at nighttime, and also it's 15 minutes from driving to get there. And that's the biggest thing in Houston, Mississippi, is the fairgrounds, whether it be a fair or a rodeo.
When you and your brother get in the truck, is this like a pickup truck and you're in
Pickup truck, a Dodge.
Okay,
it was a blue Dodge. I remember that. My daddy had a toolbox on the back of it. We sit on it.
okay, so you're sitting in the back bed of the truck
Yeah.
facing backwards?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're open to the night sky?
Yeah.
And Dad and rodeo guy are in the cab?
Well, yeah, but that's when he was taking him to rodeo. Yeah. But they were in the cab. Yeah.
What was it like riding in the back of the truck?
It's amazing. It's amazing because it's a full moonlit night. The air is fresh. It's summertime, but the night times were always cooler. It's something about in Mississippi. Even now, when I go back home, the stars seem so close. The moon seems so close, like you can always touch it. It is just that beautiful and just that magnificent. Even now, when I go home, I'm looking up and like the moon looks so much closer than it does here upstate New York. It's just this amazing feeling. It's riding the back of the truck. We used to do our hands like this and like this, but we can lean over because we could fall off the truck, but it's Mississippi in 1970 something, so no one cared.
And so when you're driving back from the rodeo, can you describe what the landscape looks like on either side of the truck, kind of right before you saw this thing?
Like on this side where the creature was, there was a pasture. The pasture was separated by a fence, and then there was a yard. But it was very hilly. Like at the very top of the hill, it's like rolling hills. Then it met the fence, then the yard, and then at the time there was this little weird, small little shack near the night light or street light, because that street light was, I guess, where the owner decided to do that, because the highway, it turns off into dirt roads. So I guess he put the night light there so when you turn off into the dirt road, you can see it without hitting the ditch. And the road or highway, the highway from the yard, there was a ditch. And then there was the yard itself. So, and on this side was just pasture. But the pasture ran up until these people's, I guess they're related. They lived in trailer homes. So there was a big pasture. I would say the pasture on my brother's side had to be at least 10 acres. They grew soybean or something. I can't forget. I don't remember what it was, but it ran right up until their yard, which is like three trailer homes were sitting there. So if my brother saw something, he would have saw it run on a flat surface towards the truck, as opposed to me seeing it coming down a hill over a fence.
So it's not really forested. It's more just rolling hills with fields kind of thing.
Yeah, not really forced to know. No,
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure I
no.
picture it correctly. So you're sitting in the back of the truck and then something just catches your eye at the top of this hill.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause at the top of the hill, because during that time period, there was no leash laws. So if you're driving a truck, especially like I said, a lot of the the side roads that lead off from the highway are dirt roads, usually going to farms or whatever. And they have dogs that chase the truck. If you ride on a bicycle, they'll chase the bicycle. So when I seen this big dog, which looked like a very big dog, my brain was like, what kind of dog is that? Because that's really big. And it just kept running down the hill all fours. I'm thinking, what kind of dog is that? Because my brain was thinking, maybe it's a Doberman. Maybe it was that. As soon as I was kind of thinking about what kind of dog it could be, it jumped over the fence. But when it jumped up, it landed on its all fours and just jumped right up. At this point, when it stood up, you saw the man body. And it just ran. But when I say run, like it met the truck with a few steps. It's met the truck, but it kept parallel. But it's weird. This is the part that my brain cannot comprehend. It saw his eyes, his beady little eyes. It's not beady little eyes, but shiny eyes, darted like at me, my brother on the side of me, and my daddy driving. But like he's wanted to stay out of sight of them for some reason. I don't know. Like he knew that my brother was occupied. Now looking back on it, he just kept focused on me and like just staring at me, and then he started to beckon for me. That's the weirdest thing right now. And it looked frustrated because I remember the lip curled up. I didn't hear anything, didn't smell anything. Its lip curled up as if it was mad that I didn't get off the truck and come to it. But it never left the borders of the yard. It stayed behind the ditch. And I guess to confirm that I was not imagining anything, Lily stepped up under the light, not away from it, under it, stayed there until got out of sight. Here's the weird thing about it. Stayed there doing this till the truck left. My brother was frozen over here. And when I could finally touch him, we were almost at home. And that's what the weird thing about it. And I cannot reconcile what happened. Like, why did that happen like that?
In terms of like where the truck is in relation to this thing, kind of, so it's coming down the hill and the car is going past this yard.
Like it just jumped over the fence, ran and met the truck. Because by the time because I saw the hill already as we were approaching it, it's running down as if to meet it.
Okay.
And when it jumped over, it literally just met it and then kept pace with it, but kept in us. It was very weird. It kept pace with it, but it kept almost a couple of seconds ahead of the truck. That's why I saw it looking at my daddy.
When it stood up and started running, it was just sort of off to the side of the truck in a ditch, running along a ditch.
No. When it jumped over the fence, it was a slight angle towards the ditch. To the border of the yard, it was a slight angle. And once it got to the border, it kind of stayed on the border where the nightlight was. Because it's weird. There's the road. When I say highway, it's not big highway. It's like 2 lanes. And then from the 2 lanes, there was a ditch. The ditch had to be from the border, a good 10 feet from the border. And then he's in the yard. He or she, titties, I guess, is female. The ditch plus it's kind of like the ditch kind of merged with the yard. I can't really explain it. Because we had a big ditch, but that yard had like a dip. they kind of merge with the yard. So that's why I would probably say 20 feet from the highway.
What's your first impression when this thing is running beside the truck? What color is it overall?
Gray.
And you said that this light was 20 feet off the ground.
About 20. It's a normal street light, but I call it a night light because it was the only light on the. I guess this guy decided to put this street light at the corner of the border of his yard. So 20 feet, maybe 20 feet.
And when it stood up, it was almost as tall as that, you said?
There was literally, let's say this was the light. His head was right here. The light, and then his head was like maybe, I don't know. It's like he covered most of the pole up. My brain is thinking 8 feet, maybe 8 or 9 feet, because it's like I saw the light, but his body just kind of covered the rest, at least over half of the pole.
Okay.
And that was because he literally could have leaned over the fence, leaned over the gully and grabbed me if he wanted to, he wanted to.
It was that close?
It was that close. It was that close.
Yeah, and so just for the listeners' sake, you're holding up your forearm to be the light post, and it's right.
Yeah.
It kind of met the middle of your forearm, right?
The middle of my forearm, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say the bottom was my elbow, and then the creature's head hit the wrist area, but the hand was the rest of the pole.
Yeah. So the fingers are the top of the pole. Its head went up to about your wrist. Yeah. So that's a huge animal.
It's a huge.
When you were saying it beckoned you, you were doing this, but for audio purposes, can you describe this action for the listener?
I remember it was the left hand. It's like he extended his hand, he or she, and then the fingers curled. And he extended it again, fingers curled. He extended it again, he or she extended the hand. I mean, as in literally the whole arm extended, fingers curled back to him. He kept doing this motion until the truck got out of sight. And of course, he turned a little bit because the truck was leaving. The truck has passed the pole now. So, of course, his body is shifting, but he's still extending his arm, his left arm, curling his fingers and bringing it back to him. So it's in a beckoning motion.
What were you feeling when it was right there beside the truck, close enough to grab you?
I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. It's like my body just stopped. My brain was working. My brain was like, what could this be? Then my brain went to every animal it could be. And it went to like, well, this is a monster. But then I'm thinking it can't be a monster because that's why I could close my eyes and shake my head, close my eyes. Like once I shake my head and open my eyes again, this is going to all disappear. It didn't. So now at this point, it was near the light, but not under the light. It's like when he or she saw me doing that head motion, like it doesn't exist. That's when it stood up under the light, as if to say, yeah, I exist. So, and I stayed frozen until, it stayed doing the arm beckoning motion until the truck literally got out of sight.
Did you have any nightmares about it?
No. But you got to understand, too, growing up, paranormal events were like, okay. So it's kind of like, wow. After the next day, I was kind of like, ooh, I saw something interesting. Because what I would do is go back to school and I would draw it for my teacher. Look what I saw. That's why I wish I still had that book, that little sketchbook, because I put the date on it and what grade I was in. And she would always say, oh, you have such a good imagination. What a good drawer. What this right here. And I'm thinking like, oh, this is not imagination, it's happening. But of course, she didn't believe it.
I'd love to see a drawing of it. Do you still draw?
Yeah, you know what? Because Going back to my old house, that house burned down now. But you have to pass that same place. That's why I know now it's different. Like that hill has been flattened down. They put more houses on it, and the house is still there. The yard is still there, but they've changed a lot of area now. But yeah, I think about that, and I think the book. My mother kept everything, but when the house burned down, the book burned too. I remember looking at those sketches about everything. Even I tried to draw the triangle spaceship. I showed my teacher all the little things that had happened. And yeah, that book probably burned. It's in ashes now. So
Was it that night that you spoke to your brother about this and
yeah.
he said he saw something else?
When I got home. As soon as I got home, the truck pulled into the driveway. That's when I could move. And when I got in the house, I was telling my dad and my mama. My daddy said he didn't see anything, and my brother said, "Well, I didn't see nothing he's talking about, but I saw a giant white lion chasing the truck from the field on the side." And that's where he left it. He never talked anything about it again. He never said anything about it ever again.
What do you make of that?
I don't know. Was it an ambush? Was it something? I have no idea. I have no idea.
And you're pretty sure he wasn't talking about the same thing you saw?
No, no, because he was on this side of the truck and he said he never looked. He said he was so focused on this side. And what gets me is that at a distance, you can still see this thing beckoning motion, but my brother still never saw from that. He was still on this side. It's kind of like we both did not come to our senses until we drove. The truck pulled up into the driveway. So like I said, I can't even explain that. I can't explain why. To me, it felt like the longest time ever. It felt like hours were passing, but it wasn't. This was really quick. It was minutes, but not hours. But it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. Like it's just so bizarre that I noticed the eye shine from the reflection of the moonlight plus the reflection from the nightlight. How his eyes were black, and the skin was kind of a darkish gray, or darker than his fur, our hair. But yeah, to this day, I cannot reconcile it.
Right.
And for a while, I put it out of my mind until my coworker, who was like, he's retired now. He was a Bigfoot enthusiast. I said, let me tell you my story. Da, da, da. And he said, wow, what if you had a scream and your daddy had stopped the truck? When he said that, everything, the details of the creature's face just rushed back to me. And I just literally went into that almost frozen state again because I never thought about that. And then when he said that, they came rushing back. And I distinctly remember those shiny, reflecting eyes of this creature, and that's what stays with me to this day now.
So, just to try to picture the creature better, kind of going from the top of the head down, did it have hair on the top of its head?
Yes, yes. It looked like the hair framed the face. I didn't see a flowing hair. It's like everything was like close to the body, like just a nice like. So everything was close, like the hair, the fur, everything on the arms, the chest, the legs, everything was like close to its body. It wasn't flowing. It was just like it was matted. Or if it was wet, it could have been just wet hair. So I didn't see anything like flowing in the wind. So yeah, so
Okay, and you said it had a human nose?
something about it was different. Just don't. It's hard to describe. Was human-ish. Like the nose, it wasn't an ape nose. No, it wasn't. The eyes wasn't apish. Nothing about it seemed apish to me. It's just monstrous. And that's the only thing I can think about it. It was human-ish. Hairy, I know he had hair all over his body, but it gave me a sense it was a human-like creature more than an ape-like creature. Because everything about it just says big, big person with hair all over his body that's able to run like a dog, but then run like a human. And it noticed me doubting myself. It noticed me shaking my head. It noticed me talking to myself, I guess, saying this can't be real. And in that moment, it stepped in front of the light, under the light, as if to say, "Look at me."
Yeah.
While I was still doing the beckoning motion towards me. So that's it gives me chills to this day because I can't explain how human it was, but it wasn't human.
Right. We kind of have an image of its height. In terms of how wide it was it really wide or was it more skinny? Some people say like it reminded them of like a skinny basketball player. Some people say it was like an enormous bodybuilder. What resonates with you in terms of its like general width?
Between the two descriptions, between basketball player and big, big wide, it was like because when you look at it, when I looked at it, the height wasn't what got it because the way it was standing, I knew it could have reached and grabbed me. It could have literally just reached and just grabbed me and kept on going. That's how big it was. But it didn't give me the sense of mass. I didn't get the massiveness, but I got the height. So it seems to be like for its height, it was appropriately sized for its height. So
You mentioned it kind of curled up its lip.
yeah, which is and it's so funny. It's not funny. It's funny now because as if it was like he was trying to talk to me, like because think about it, it was in this running motion, but not really running because it's just a couple of steps. But when it turned, it curled its lips as it was speaking to me, but it wasn't. I didn't hear anything. It just like it was like almost like a like like why are you not listening to me? Why are you not coming to me? That was the look, the energy I got from it. Like I'm telling you to come here. Why don't you come to me? And and his lips was like kind of curling up, like like as if to like scorn me. That's what it felt like.
Did you see any teeth?
No, because I just saw the lip curl up like that, but I didn't really see any teeth.
What did the breasts look like, if you don't mind describing that?
I'd say breast because the chest was saggy. That's the only thing. That's why I say it could be a female but the body did not look female-ish. It just because the chest was saggy, like just saggy chest, down to maybe the top rib, just kind of like hanging, like the top rib portion of the body. It hung down to that.
So it was
So
like
and it was like saggy.
furry
Go ahead.
skin that hung down to the mid rib
Yeah,
or bottom
yeah,
rib.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's weird to talk about it still.
Yeah.
It's really,
Thank you for going into such detail with me. I really appreciate it.
it is weird.
Um, you mentioned that it did the typical kind of track runner movement.
Yeah, the track runner, just like that, but it's weird because it was two steps. Basically, because once it did this, it was there. But that's why it had time just to kind of stay in front of the truck enough, but to like it literally stopped when I say it curled its lip. That's when it looked right at me. Because basically after that, it just walked towards the nightlight. And that's why it kind of started to beckon for me. So yeah, it's just weird. My brain is still trying to process from the hill. I'm thinking dog, 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 dog. It jumps over the fence and it lands on all fours, still in my brain, dog, dog, dog. Then it stands up and runs towards the truck, which is he's there. my whole body just froze. It just like I can't process that motion, the quickness of it. And then here's where I think the details in my brain slowed it down for me. Like it felt like hours because it's looking at me. It could have grabbed me. It didn't grab me. It just started to curl its lip and walk towards the light as if to say, "Hey, I'm here," and with the beckoning motion and looking a little flustered that I didn't just jump off the back of the truck and come to it. It kept doing it till the truck got out of sight. That's a really short time, but it felt like forever. And like I said, to this day, I can't reconcile what my brother really saw because my brother don't really talk about it. He had a lot of issues too, a lot of issues, a lot with the paranormal. But for him, especially he was like older than me too, he kept quiet about it because he's Mr. Popular. He didn't want to be, you know. He told my parents about the white giant lion that's chasing the truck, and it's Mississippi. There's no. He really described it as an African lion because we used to watch PBS all the time and Sesame Street and all that other stuff, Electric Company, and he described it as a large white lion from Africa with the everything. So and there's no lions in Houston, Mississippi, unless something escaped from the zoo. And the zoo is like
Yeah.
in Memphis. The
Yeah.
nearest zoo is in Memphis. So
Did any of the track runner movement not look real? Like some people say that sometimes these things will move and it almost looks like they're in a video game or like they're on an escalator or
oh
something.
no, it looked real. It looked like it was getting ready to on your set go. As soon as it landed on all fours, it was get ready, set, go. It was just like the track gun going off, and he was there, just like that. That's what I think. That what froze me because my brain was still on dog, 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 dog. What kind of dog is that? What kind of dog is that? But when it stood up and did the track move, my whole body just went.
Yeah.
I guess I left my body. Like my brain was still functioning. I remember it. My brain was still functioning, but my body stopped. My body stopped. I couldn't move my fingers. I was trying to say hit my brother, but my arm wouldn't even, I couldn't get my arm to move. I was literally trying to make my arm move, and I was trying to scream or get my brother's attention. And it's like my whole body was paralyzed. I could not, and I'm trying to get myself to move. Only thing I could move was my head. And that's why I kept closing my eyes and shaking my head as if to say, this is not real. That's the only thing I could do. I remember distinctly trying to elbow my brother, but I couldn't get my arm to even move. My whole body was literally paralyzed, except for my neck up. But I couldn't speak. I tried to say my brother, my brother's Louis. I'm like trying to say his name. I couldn't say his name. I was fixed on this creature, and 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 my brain was still on this creature until the truck got out of sight. So I'm thinking, looking back on it, whoever was on my brother's side, all had the same effect on my brother, maybe because we didn't come to our senses and we didn't know each other's experience. I didn't see anything on his side of the road. He didn't see anything on my side of the road. And I felt like maybe this is what this is what psychically maybe I felt like the creature knew that my brother's occupied. Your daddy is not going to see this. Just me and you. That's what I felt like. And my brother's experience, he was very vague about it. He was saying, I just saw a giant white lion chasing the truck. But and he said, I was so scared because I thought I was gonna catch the truck. And that's it. And then my mother questioned him, like, wait, so you didn't see nothing? Talk to my daddy. He said, I didn't see nothing, but my daddy. Now looking back on my daddy, because I could see my daddy. If my dad had saw it, I mean what I know about my daddy, my granddaddy, my relatives, he would have been like, "Oh Lord Jesus," and just kept driving 45. He would have said, "I just saw a demon," and that's what my dad would have said. Would just kept on like nothing happened.
You mentioned that like a few days later, the next day, you're driving in the school bus by this property. Can you explain that or tell that again?
Well, it wasn't next day. It because there was summer break because I remember distinctly going back to school to Houston on that same route and seeing the, I think, brother and sister from the Big Pink. Oh, I ain't gonna say the house. Well, I can say it now. I ain't say the road. The Big Pink house and their cousins getting on from across the road. I remember looking at them like, do they know what I saw? I never said anything to them about it. 'Cause I didn't even know them like that. It was like a high and by thing. The kids over on the opposite side of the road, on my brother's side, where he saw the creature, they were older. They were like 14, 15. But on on the side that I saw the Bigfoot, they were like maybe if I was like 8 or 9, they had to be 11 or 12.
Okay.
But the house is still there. The house is still there. What's so funny about when I go home now? Uh, Everyone's dead except for my dad and my brother. My brother, he lives in Texas somewhere. But now I go through Houston town and you see people got the little Bigfoot cutout boards of their yards. Like at least 4 or 5 people have it in their yard. So I think it must be a thing now.
And what county is this in Mississippi?
This is Chickasaw County. Chickasaw County. As a matter of fact, that road, you have houses on this side. But I'll say like 20 miles up, not even 20 miles, it parallels the Natchez Trace Parkway. So the house that burned down where I grew up, I would go to the end of my property because we had an acre, but it wasn't clear. It was just number of trees. But the pasture next to us was clear because they had cattle. You could walk from the back of my house, all the way up to the Natchez Trace Parkway.
Are there any other kind of peak paranormal experiences that stand out in your life?
Just the UFO, the Shadow Man. The list goes on because you have to understand. My grand Here's the argument that I grew up hearing. My mother always told my daddy, "Do not let your daddy give my kids anything," because she was afraid that he's going to curse us. Like I said, he was known for talking to dead people. Now, fast forward, past the Bigfoot. Bigfoot was just like one candle in the middle of a whole world of paranormal. This is when I went to junior college. I think it was at the time it was called IJC in Fulton, Mississippi. It was my last year there, I think. But I remember before my granddaddy died, 3 months before my granddaddy died, I was in my auntie's house and I said, "Where's granddad?" "Oh, he's laying in the bed in his house." So I walked out, across the way into his house. As I walked in, his door was open. I walked in and I heard my granddad talking to someone. And I'm like, who's in the house? So I went in and he kept talking to this person. As I approached my granddad laying in the bed, I felt the strongest presence ever. It felt like as if your eyes were closed, but you're in a crowded room and you could feel people around you. It was that strong. As I walked up, my granddad stopped talking to whoever he was talking to and said, "Hey, how you doing?" Da, 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 da. But at the same time, my granddad's laying down. So basically, my body is facing my granddad, where my granddad's head is. At the foot of the bed was where I sensed this man. And I say man because I felt it so intensely that I could tell you he was 6'2", bigger than me. As I was talking to my granddaddy, I felt as if someone was imagine your eyes being closed, and you're talking, but someone is putting their finger all in your face. You can feel the air and the poking and that. And so you try to ignore it because all of a sudden you notice this. And I kept talking to granddaddy. And finally, this man, he swung at my crotch. So I just jumped back. And when my granddaddy saw me jump back, the dude stopped. And then my granddaddy's eyes got so big. So I told my daddy said, well, he probably just thinking that you have the gift now. So I'm like, and I don't think I do, but I noticed that when there are situations that needs to be addressed spiritually, I can pick it up. I can pick it up and read it. But my mother always said it was my granddaddy's curse because those things happen, like being followed by a shadow person. This is a perfect example. I used to do a lot of seasonal jobs. I was working it was in Washington State. It was a hot springs there. I had a roommate that would always have night terrors at the same time every night. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And every night at the same time, he would have night terrors. And he'll wake up everyone in the little, because we all had the little housing where it's like 3 to a room, 4 to a room. And every night he would have these horrible night terrors. So one night, I just happened to wake up and I sit up in my bed and I saw a shadow person walking on the wall, just casually, had a little top hat on, walking across on the wall, as if he was like a part of the wall, but not part of the wall. And so I went like, what? He looks at me. I can't explain how a shadow can look at you, but he turns and looks at me and I said, yeah, you. Because think about it, how I grew up. This is not a fear for me. This is something I've dealt with, whether it be a physical entity or a non-physical entity. So when I saw it, I said, you can't be here. It raised up and looked at me again as if to like lean off the wall to get a better look at me. And I said, you can't be here. And it left. So the nights went on. My roommate had no more night terrors. And a month went on, nearing the end of our little seasonal job. And my other roommate said, yo, you don't have those crazy night terrors anymore. So I told him what I saw and what happened. He said, so basically you saved my life. He said, I've had it all my years. He said, I've had it ever since I can remember being attacked at nighttime. But the thing is, growing up where I grew up, how my parents viewed paranormal, not just my parents, but my grandparents, it was more like a common thing. So when I am faced with something, I don't really panic no more. I think the Bigfoot was the time that I panicked because I couldn't move. But after that, anything else paranormal, I just kind of like breathe and deal with it.
What was the gift that they described your granddaddy as having?
Talking to dead people. When I say talking to dead people, this is what the community people said. Like people in the old folks in the community would say, like, they're talking about someone you think that are alive. Like they'll say, Sister so and so came to see your granddad last night. So, and my granddad would talk to them as if they were there in the room. I think growing up, I've heard him talk to people, and come to find out, after my mother passed away last year, my daddy has the same gift to certain points. So my granddaddy was known to talk to dead people, like literally, she's on the couch, he's talking to her, she's dead. I mean, my granddad would talk about, this is an old Southern thing. I don't know if it's Southern Black, but an old Southern thing where they talk about putting roots on people. For example, like ask the question, like, what's wrong with my auntie? Why she's like something wrong with her mentally? What's something wrong with her mentally? And my daddy said, well, my daddy, my granddaddy, try to put roots on somebody else, but his daughter stepped on it by accident. So what roots are, I think they're cursed, but I think they curse bad. And somehow my granddaddy and a lot of the older people, especially all the older black people in the community, believed in that. Like if you mess with them, they're gonna put roots on you. And people in my generation would joke about it like, oh, we're gonna put roots on you. But apparently that's what the older parents did. And my granddad always said, well, I'm going to hell. I don't care. Because my grandmother said, you going to hell because you always talking to dead people. So, so it was just that weird conversation where you grew up like that. So when I have issues that I have to address, I just address them. It's just like, oh, you're dead. You need to go away.
So your granddad was a religious person, but he viewed his gift as...
Not really. That's a weird question. I don't know. Everyone always said, "Yo, he's going to hell." He said he's going to hell. That's what. I don't know. One thing about older black people back in the day, they kept secrets. There's no deathbed confession. It dies with them. So my granddad never told me about his early experience. My daddy had to tell me something, but not a lot. Like when I felt attacked by something in the middle of the night, my daddy would say, "Well, probably because you probably got some of your granddaddy's stuff." So, but it was weird. It was no one talked about it. It was talked about like a gossip. It was talked about like, well, your granddaddy, he be talking to dead people. It was like that, and it was all the old folks knew this in the community about my granddaddy. And about roots and about putting roots on people and stuff like that. And
so you walked in his house that one day and the door was open and he was just talking to somebody laying in bed.
yeah, I was on bed, and that was the first time I felt it so strong, like a person's in the room. And I really felt it when he swung at my crotch. So I jumped back out of reflex.
And your granddad's eyes got all wide.
And my granddad's eyes got big, like, oh, you see it, okay. But I didn't see it. The presence was so strong that I could describe him to you. That's how strong it was.
For the skeptical people out there, kind of thinking back to your Bigfoot encounter and all of that, for the skeptical people out there that don't believe in this stuff, say you had never experienced it yourself, what would you say to a skeptical person kind of from that point of view about what you saw?
Do you? because the thing is to treat it as my parents did and I growing up to do it is this a normal thing. The paranormal is not para is this normal. And if you don't believe, there's always something that happens in everyone's life. And you question, why did that happen like that? Or what happened? What was that in my corner of my eye? You could choose to ignore it or explore it. A lot of people don't explore it. For me, that Bigfoot encounter was not my choice. If I had a choice, I would never want to see that again because I never had that experience where I couldn't move. That's one, in all my paranormal experiences, I felt somewhat in control. In that physical moment of seeing a Bigfoot and could not move and knowing that it could literally just grab you off the back of a truck and take you somewhere, that to me to this day still bothers me. But hey, seeing a UFO doesn't bother me because that didn't even after like another week, it wore off. The excitement wore off. After shadow people, after whatever, those things didn't bother me because in my brain, I still had some kind of control. Like I was in a truck when I seen a UFO. So my brain, it couldn't bother me. It didn't affect me. The Bigfoot affected me because I could not move. I could not even nudge my brother. I could not speak. It's like my whole body was not mine. I was literally if it wanted to, it could have literally leaned over, knocked over the truck. It could have leaned over and grabbed me, my brother, and my dad. But it did. But that was the only part about my paranormal journey that still bothers me, because I can't understand why it didn't, and I'm glad it didn't, but I had no control.
Well, as you can see, the match has gone out. And as the smoke clears, I can still smell that cool, fresh Mississippi summer night air. I hope you enjoyed hearing that Houston, Mississippi monster encounter. And you know what? If you did enjoy it, you should share the love. A great way to support this show is to text a link of this episode to someone who you think might enjoy it too. Another easy way to support the show is to give Matchbook Flashback a 5-star rating. It just takes one click, and it really helps this little show grow. If you've been listening and you haven't given us a 5-star rating, please do it, please. By the way, if you or someone you know has an unusual story, have them send it my way. My email is alec@parasaur.co. It's spelled out in the show notes. And that's it for me, but thank you so much for being here, and I hope you come back next week, because I have another match to light.